It's my favorite season because it's witchy season. I hope you enjoy my t-shirt. It says, I'm not the bigger person. I'll curse your entire bloodline. I will put a link in the description to where I got this because it's adorable and I love it and I'm gonna wear it for Halloween. Hi, I'm Colleen, and if you're new here, I read witchy books all year round and write them. And today I'm gonna do something a little different than what I usually do in October. In the description, you'll find links to like my newsletter, my books, all that stuff you could need. And if you enjoy this video, please hit subscribe and hang out with me. I'm pretty sure I just saw a ghost fly by. So yesterday I had kind of a hard reading day, and it was because I had to read a book for book club, and I didn't really like the book. And then on top of not liking it, the ending was extremely sad. So it had me like really down. And I was originally going to start reading A Song to Drown Rivers, and I'm forgetting the author's last name right now, Anne Liang. But I know that book is supposed to be really sad. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to table it for the end of the month instead of right now. And I decided, instead of doing my normal witchy video that I do at this time every year, in which I just talk about a bunch of witchy books I love and that are coming out and stuff like that, I give myself a little bit of a reading challenge. I have several witchy books on my TBR for October, and I'm not gonna have time to read all of them because I also have like a thriller and some other stuff on my TBR and a lot of work. I thought it'd be really fun to read the beginning of each of them, and then from there decide what I'm going to do, which I'm gonna read, which I might save for later, etc. Before I go into that very fun exercise that I did yesterday afternoon, last night, and finished up with one this morning, I want to tell you officially about the second book in the Witches of Star Island, Bewitching Rosemary. Here is the beautiful cover. And now, not to be rude to the Hedge Witch, which is right here because I do love that cover too, but when they sent me the cover for Bewitching Rosemary, I just was like head over heels immediately in love. Just, it's perfect. If you read The Hedge Witch and you know Rosemary, who is the main character of the Hedge Witch, Laurel's older sister, you know that this is like totally her vibe. Bewitching Rosemary is available for pre-order right now. It's coming out on November 19th. I will put a link in the description if you want to pre-order it. And let me just sell it to you really quickly before we talk about the other witchy books I read. Rosemary is the second of 5 Bay witch sisters who are living on Star Island, which is a fictional island that's about 50 miles further into the Atlantic past Nantucket, which is in New England for those of you who don't live in America. We ended the Hedge Witch with this generational curse over the Bay line that has not yet been solved, but also a prophecy that each of their soulmates were showing up. So Rosemary, who is a very, very much like a flower child, she likes doing spell work naked. She likes to partake in some very witchy hallucinogenics. She has a very healthy sex life. She meets the new sheriff of Star Island and realizes he is her soulmate. And she gets a little nervous because she cannot imagine someone with a job like police officer actually handling her, because a lot of people think she's a lot. On top of all of this, there's a very pesky family of witches and warlocks with their last name, the Stocks, who are after the Bay sisters' blood because there is this curse on their family that if anyone can collect like basically blood samples from all the living bays, they will get all of their power. And another one is going to show up on Star Island. If you read The Hedge Witch and you're wondering right now, well, is there going to be a past life section? You bet there is. And there is a little hint in the cover as to where we might be going for this foray into the past. I really hope everyone loves this book. I super loved writing it, and Rosemary and Asher, who is the hero, were some of my favorite two to write. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments because I obviously, as an author, love talking about my books. Okay, now let's move on to other witchy books. I have 6 witchy books on my October TBR, so I read the beginning of 6 different books, and I will go through each of them and tell you how much I read and where it's now moving in my TBR pile because of that. First up, I have one on my Kindle, and I'm just loading the cover right now, and it's Deja, Brew by Celestine Martin. And I read, you know, it's hard with Kindle to like figure out exactly how much you read, but I read the first chapter and there was like just like a teeny tiny little prologue-y page, but it was very cute. And if you're looking for like a rom-com-y witchy book, I'd recommend it. We start with Serena, and she is a kitchen witch, and she's just having a horrible day. So the chapter is basically following her through all this stuff going wrong, and she's really annoyed because it's October and it's supposed to be her lucky month, but she's had some family hardship lately. I know that this is a series. I have not read the other books in the series, but it doesn't feel like I'm not going to be able to follow, because this feel like just how it starts, it feels pretty much like its own story. We've met a magician who I think is going to be her love interest, who is very sweet, and he's wearing like a really nice tuxedo right at the beginning. And there's already been some super amazing lines in here that I have highlighted because I really like how Celestine Martin writes. Like, her voice is very compelling and her writing is really good. So I enjoyed my first chapter with that one. Next, I have The Witch of Wild Things by Raquel Vasquez Gillian. And I've read a little bit more of this than everything else. I read the first 28 pages of this one. I had already read, I think, like the first 7. And then yesterday I took it outside and just decided to read a little bit of a chunk of it. I'm liking this so far. We're following Sage Flores, who is back in town. And while Deja Brew felt very light, because these are both like contemporary witchy, this one feels a little bit heavier. So right off the bat, you know that Sage has a sister who died, and she can sometimes see her ghost if she starts crying, but she doesn't want to see her ghost. And Sage believes it's her fault her sister died. She has another sister who's in like a really bad relationship. And you can't, like, there's hints that this guy might be abusive to her yet, but we don't have any confirmation, just that he's kind of like a bad guy. And Sage really antagonizes him. And so I don't know exactly where we're going to go yet. She also just got a job with this guy she had a crush on with high school. So while I think these are both going to have like that witchy rom-com feel, I think Deja Brew might be a little bit lighter than The Witch of Wild Things when it comes to the content. Next, I have The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. And I read just the prologue of this, which was, I'm so bad at Roman numerals. Okay, so it was just like 5 pages. And I was planning on reading the prologue and the first chapter. But then once I read the prologue, I was like, this feels very young adult. And I bought this because it was on like a witchy recommends table at Barnes & Noble. This is YA. I looked up then, it's YA, and I'm just not a big YA reader. And I know that it's also a series, which is fine. But I don't know if I'm going to read it right now because it is YA. I just feel like there's a lot of witchy books I want to read. I'm not feeling like, oh, there's like no witchy books coming out this month. Obviously, I have like a big pile. So I think this one is going to be shelved maybe to like winter when I feel like I want to read a witchy story, not necessarily during spooky season. Not to say anything negative about the writing style. The writing was very good. It just read very much YA. And if you follow along, you know I'm not a very big YA reader. I read like 2 or 3 a year and usually enjoy one. Moving on, I have The Witches of New York by Amy McKay, who, after I got this, I realized wrote a book called The Birth House, which I read a very long time ago, but really liked. I think I read it like 10 or 12 years ago. I'm not exactly sure when. So I actually had a hard time. I read this one right before bed last night, and I only read the first 8 pages. And I had a hard time putting this one down because I was like, oh, I actually really want to read this. It sounds really good. We're in 1880 in New York City. And the way it opened was just so like, the setting was so rich. And there's like these women who seem like a little bit of evil witches living in New York. And I love this. There was one line in here I'm going to see if I can find. Taper in one hand, glass jar in the other. She poured wax around the edge of the jar's lid to seal it shut. The jar, filled with stale urine, old needles, shards of a mirror, brass buttons, bent nails, and 13 drops of blood from her left thumb, was what her grandmother called a witch's bottle, a crude charm meant to guard against hexes. And I was like, well, yeah, I want to read that. I like kind of gross witchcraft stuff sometimes. So this one was hard to put down. I was like, oh yeah. So I'm definitely going to read this one in October because I really liked the beginning. Then I have Night of the Witch by Sarah Rosh and Beth Rebus. And I actually read the beginning of this a few weeks ago. I read the first chapter and I did not read a second chapter last night or this morning. It starts with a raid on a witch's village. And this one girl, Fritzy, survives, but she sees like a ton of her friends and family members killed, kidnapped, taken away, burnt, all that. It's just a massacre. And she makes this like proclamation that she's going to go after the witch hunters. I know that a witch hunter, Otto, is going to be a main character, but it says that he is a Hexenjager, which I assume means witch hunter, but he's like undercover because Hexenjäger killed his mother, who was not a witch. So he's like trying to infiltrate from within. I liked the beginning. It was very exciting and fast paced. I think I will read this one in October. And then lastly, I got The Stone Witch of Florence by Anna Rosh from Book of the Month. And I read the first chapter, which was about, I don't know, 20 pages. No, probably not. Oh, this had a prologue, and it had some really cool maps, which if you know me, you know I love maps. And then it also had some like quotes from like first person texts from the time period. But let me just show you the map. This is a beautiful book. Like if you're a sucker for a beautiful book, I'd recommend it. So this is a map of Florence, Firenze. Then you have a prologue about a message being delivered to this woman named Minerva. And then like, just look at this, like how beautifully illustrated all the parts are. So in the prologue, we are in 1348, and then we jump back to 1330, so about 18 years earlier. And in the prologue, we find out that Minerva has been exiled, and now she's being asked to return. So I'm going to assume she's a witch. But this just had such a lovely historical feel. I feel like I've been struggling with historical fiction lately, which is one of my favorite genres, like when I look at my entire life of reading. And so I was like, well, maybe this one will be a good one to get back into it. So I did really enjoy the beginning, and I do want to read this one in October. Okay, so those are the 6 books I read the beginning of, and I'll tell you exactly the order in which I think I'm going to read them. First, I think I'm going to do this thing that I do sometimes where I read more than one book at a time, because I feel like I'm not always in the mood for light and I'm not always in the mood for dark. So it's kind of nice to have a mix. So the first 2 I'm going to continue on with are The Witch of Wild Things and The Witches of New York. I think they'll be good companion witchy reads. I don't think I'll get them confused at all, because while they're both about witches, they're like very different settings and backgrounds. So I think I'll be okay there. Also, I do think that the Witch of Wild Things will be kind of a quick read, and I do think The Witches of New York will be a little bit of a longer read. So I think it'll be a nice juxtaposition to balance them together. Next, I think I'm going to do Deja, Brew, and The Stone Witch at the same time. Again, I don't think there'll be any confusing a modern rom-com with a historical witch during the plague in Italy. I think I'll be able to read those 2 at the same time with little to no issue. And then lastly are these 2, which oddly I bought on the same day, totally like a whim at Barnes & Noble. This one I am shelving for now. Not permanently, but for now. And I think what I'm going to say is that if I finish these 4, and then I also have, I'd like to read a thriller this month. I have a thriller, and I mean, I do kind of want to read A Song to Drown Rivers. And with those 4, those 2, and I already read 2 books, that'd be 8 books in October, which is like a pretty like normal high end for me. If I find that I just fly through some books, wouldn't it be nice? I just got so much writing work from my editor in my email this morning, so this isn't going to happen. But wouldn't it be nice if I just had a day in which I just read nonstop? That sounds lovely. But maybe I'll force myself to do that and just like get a big chunk of reading done. But if that happens, I will read Night of the Witch. I will go ahead and read that one. And then, 5 witchy books in a month is a lot. This ended up being kind of a quick video, but I will say it was like a really fun exercise coming off a book that sort of had me down. I feel like I've been struggling with book slumps a lot more than normal, probably because I'm really busy with my other work. So if a book's not like really engaging me, I always feel like I should be working. And that's probably because my work is, somewhat literature intertwined. But so I really liked this idea, and I think I might do this from now on, of reading the first chapter of a couple of books rather than just sort of forcing myself to read a book and then I'm on like page 180 and just slogging through it and there's still 200 pages left. I would really recommend this. Maybe I'll do this once a month. Probably not always themed, because there aren't a lot of months in which I read multiple books in like a very niche genre. Because I don't read like a lot of holiday books in December. I don't know. I can't think of any other month. I guess sometimes in June, I read a lot of like summary books. I don't know. But this was really fun. So if you liked this format of me reading a chapter of each book, giving you a quick intro and then telling you whether or not where I was going to put it on my TBR, please let me know in the comments. Also, if you've read any of these or any of them are on your TBR, let me know. Let me know what you think or thought or excited for. If you have witchy books on your TBR for October, let me know. As I said before, any questions about Bewitching Rosemary, please put them down there. Love chatting about my book. If you made it this far and you don't want to write words, but you want to let me know you watched the whole video, give me the witch emoji in the comments. And as always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a good book. And I hope they're all about witches. See you soon.